Hollywood's golden age was built on glittering illusions, flawless smiles, and the promise of immortality through film. But what audiences never saw were the scars, deformities, illnesses, and hidden disabilities that the studio system worked tirelessly to bury, manipulate, or weaponize. Because the entire business model of classic Hollywood rested on selling perfection. And anything that reminded viewers that their idols were vulnerable, human, or broken had to be hidden at all costs. So stay with this story until the end, because the final revelation about how those old cover-up methods are still being used today will leave you stunned. Behind the blinding lights of premieres and the carefully airbrushed portraits, countless stars carried private burdens that shaped their careers in ways few people realize. Take Rita Hayworth, for example, whose transformation from Margarita Cancino into the glamorous icon of Gilda was engineered not just by name changes, but by excruciating physical procedures. Her naturally low hairline was considered too ethnic, so MGM subjected her to years of painful electrolysis sessions without anesthesia, burning away follicles one by one as she gripped a towel and sobbed in silence, all while having her skin bleached to erase her Spanish identity, her voice retrained, her body forced into grueling dance routines despite one leg being shorter than the other, a condition hidden by custom shoes that left her in chronic pain.
Then there was Lon Chaney Sr., revered as the man of 1,000 faces, whose ability to terrify and move audiences with his grotesque transformations came at horrifying personal cost. For The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1923, he wore a 70-pound harness that contorted his body so violently it crushed his lungs, causing him to vomit blood between takes. For The Phantom of the Opera, 1925, he inserted wires into his nostrils, pulling them back with hooks to create his skull-like visage, leaving him with recurring infections and permanent breathing issues. And yet fans never knew, because his suffering was marketed as genius. Clark Gable, the so-called King of Hollywood, embodied effortless masculine charm on screen. But off-screen, he hid a secret that co-stars whispered about. By his early 30s, Gable had lost nearly all his teeth to gum disease and wore a full set of dentures that fit poorly, producing chronic infections and a notorious odor that Vivien Leigh, his co-star in Gone with the Wind, found unbearable, masking her disgust by dabbing peppermint oil on her lips before their legendary kiss. Joan Crawford complained privately of the same problem, but the studios silenced them because Gable was too valuable to tarnish. James Dean, the eternal symbol of youthful rebellion, was nearly blind without his thick glasses and partially deaf, facts the studio brushed aside by marketing his squint and slow reactions as smoldering intensity, when in truth he was often struggling just to see his mark or hear his cue. His misunderstood hesitations and unpredictability became the foundation of his acting style, lauded as raw genius, but in reality it was a survival mechanism. Merle Oberon, praised for her beauty in Wuthering Heights, lived a tormenting double life. A disfiguring car crash left one side of her face paralyzed, forcing her husband to invent special camera lights to smooth her appearance, while she endured endless makeup sessions that lightened her naturally darker complexion to hide her Indian heritage. She denied her own relatives in public, terrified her secret would destroy her career in a racist industry obsessed with whiteness. Jean Tierney, considered one of the most beautiful actresses of the 1940s, suffered from severe bipolar disorder and color blindness that made it nearly impossible for her to distinguish costumes on set. Yet instead of compassion, studios prescribed unregulated drugs and subjected her to electroshock therapy that left her memory shredded, all while forcing her into production schedules that worsened her illness. Harold Lloyd, the silent-era daredevil, famously dangled from skyscraper clocks with apparent ease. But few knew he had lost 2 fingers in an accident with a live explosive prop. To conceal it, he wore a prosthetic glove with false digits, which made gripping ledges exponentially more dangerous. His stunts weren't just daring, they were nearly suicidal, performed with one hand that could never fully hold on. Bela Lugosi, forever immortalized as Dracula, carried wounds from World War I that left him with chronic leg pain and failing eyesight.
His iconic, stiff, hypnotic movements weren't deliberate choices, but consequences of sciatica and his inability to see more than shadows. And when the pain became unbearable, he turned to morphine, descending into addiction. Studios exploited his suffering, branding his decline as eccentricity while blacklisting him from major roles. Katharine Hepburn, hailed as one of cinema's greatest legends, developed essential tremors that made her head and hands shake visibly, so she crafted an entirely new acting style to hide it. Rapid-fire dialogue, scarves that concealed trembling hands, and exaggerated physical energy that distracted audiences. This improvisation became her trademark, but behind the style was fear of exposure and a studio system ready to punish her if she appeared weak. Lionel Barrymore, patriarch of the famous acting dynasty, was crippled by severe arthritis and a shattered hip. MGM initially forced him into metal braces so painful they caused bleeding sores before finally allowing him to act from a wheelchair, though they cut his pay and limited his casting as punishment for his condition. Even Judy Garland, beloved Dorothy of The Wizard of Oz, wore ruby slippers with special orthopedic supports inside to correct a leg-length discrepancy, while enduring amphetamine regimens forced on her by MGM to keep her thin and energetic, treatments that led directly to her later addictions and early death. And these are only a fraction of the hidden realities of old Hollywood. MGM alone had what insiders whispered was a correction department, essentially a secret unit designed to fix actors' perceived flaws, whether by crash diets, cosmetic surgeries, or dental reconstructions, often without proper anesthesia or long-term safety. Studios kept doctors and surgeons on retainer, many of whom performed procedures in dressing rooms, altering faces, bodies, and even vocal cords to fit an idealized image. Disabilities were seen as weaknesses, and actors who resisted often had their contracts threatened or their reputations smeared as difficult. In an age before social media, the studios controlled every photograph, every interview, every glimpse into a star's private life, ensuring the audience saw only gods and goddesses, never the fragile human beings behind the mask. What makes this even more astonishing is how much of what we love most about these stars, Lugosi's haunting walk, Dean's hesitant pauses, Hepburn's clipped delivery, were not calculated artistic choices, but adaptations born of necessity, forced by pain, disability, or medical trauma. Their brilliance wasn't perfection, it was resilience transformed into performance. And here's the shocking truth I promised you at the end. Many of the techniques invented in old Hollywood to hide disability and deformity never disappeared. They were simply rebranded. Special lighting pioneered to conceal Merle Oberon's facial paralysis became a standard tool of glamour photography,